Yeah, I mean, I think as chefs, we tend to, well, it's a business first and foremost. Um, and for me, it means it means a whole lot of different things, a lot of different variables. Most chefs pretty much just want something that's going to be cost efficient. I hate to say it, like kind of lowball the farmer as much as they can to make a profit margin. Yeah, there are chefs who are into, all chefs are into like, oh, this cool new vegetable or this tomato tastes sweet, and they want it. So, but many chefs don't care about what these crops mean to the environment, how they can sustain the community, because a restaurant is only a small percentage of your neighborhood. Most people probably can't eat at restaurants that can afford to use these exotic vegetables. So, from my perspective, I really feel like, when I talked about, we need to look at more what can we breed crops to help feed the communities in mass. That they're able to taste these trendy or nutrient dense vegetables, be it whatever, instead of saying, oh, you can only see this vegetable from this farmer in this restaurant, and the average person can't afford to eat at that restaurant. So for me, I think it needs to be a transition into what can we do for the community, instead of restaurants can order whatever they want, and they're gonna have their client. They have that new, like I mentioned, that new 5-finger carrot that's on a plate with a little sauce. That's cool, but what does that mean for the long term? And that's where I'm getting at. That's why I think is the future is, to me, is, as a chef that's really involved in my community, I look at it through the lens of, well, what about my community? They deserve to be able to eat these really good nutrient dense vegetables. Great question. I think personally it's more of what I mentioned, like what can we breed to sustain with the way the environment is going right now. Like we're dealing with a lot more of flooding. So we love okra. Like this time of year, we talked about the young lady that went after me, after Glenn talked about, string beans, snap beans, and people like, you can't really grow them in the South during this time of year because it's so hot. So yeah, it'd be good to be able to breed things that are resistant to heat, resistant to flooding. Right now, the only thing you're really gonna see in fields in South Carolina is okra and peppers. And on the coast, if we're having issues, and okra is something that's very relevant to our culture also. So if we're having flooding issues, we need okra that can be resistant to water. So I think it's more about breeding things that are relevant to your cultural region. Somebody in New Mexico, who they love their hatch chili peppers. They may have issues with the chili peppers. They may all of a sudden get these really crazy cold spells. Well, can we breed chili peppers, a derivative of a hatch chili pepper, to deal with cold weather? So I think it's more about the region and where you're at. Here in the South right now, we love our tomatoes. Once it gets super hot like this, our tomatoes are gone. Can we breed tomatoes that can deal with the heat? So I think it's more or less what's relevant in your neighborhood, in your region, and what is the issues that you're dealing with. And we're dealing with a lot of heat, a lot of water, and a lot of salt in the air. That's a great question. I think, because, I'm still learning a lot about the agribusiness side of things. For me, I think more or less just being able to keep, obviously you're a big company, but keep the small person in mind. Keep the everyday farmer, the smaller farmers, the ones who, are engaged into the community. Keep them in mind. How can you support them, with your resources? Because there's enough at the table for everybody. So, when you have these bigger companies, how can you use your assets, to help the smaller, because there's a balance that needs to happen. And I believe that everybody can support each other, because the smaller companies are going to be the ones, to me, that are going to be able to sustain the communities more, because the bigger companies are dealing with, larger scale corporations. Smaller farmers, they need access, they need help, they need resources. And I think if you have a bigger company, should be able to, in my opinion, at least give a little helping hand to the smaller companies.